times a charm. Yeah. The treble clef creates a little crosshair with the second line from the bottom. Those playing at home, little crosshair thing. So that second line from the bottom is a G. Okay. And then with the bass clef, the dot goes above and below the F line. So this second line is an F, and this second line from the bottom is a G. Everyone cool with that? Yeah. Just a quick recap. Another recap. The notes go from A to G, and they just keep cycling around indefinitely to the end of time. And then our little acronyms. Every good boy deserves fruit. Saying yesterday, it's not very 2020, but we'll work on something new. And then face. Okay, so we're going to use that for treble clef. And then we're going to use good boys. Sorry, my big hands. Hey, is that Michaela? Maybe. Okay. Don't worry, Daniela. Just keep going. Good boys deserve fruit always. And we're going to use the acronym all cows eat grass. Or does anyone remember all cows? Does anyone remember the weird one I came up with yesterday? I think Rachel's the only one who was here yesterday.
I've completely forgot.
It's like okay. It was weird and immemorable, so it's okay.
I may have.
You enjoyed it? I thought it was kind of cute.
But I can't remember what it is. Sorry.
That's all right. Gecko, which is just the other way around. Okay. It's weird, but because it's unusual and doesn't make any sense, you may remember it. So, just a quick recap. So, when we're looking at the treble clef, we go every good boy deserves fruit, and we're working from the bottom line, and we're going up, and we're going face. We're going from the bottom line, and we're going up. Okay. So I'm speeding through this because it's a recap, but Beck, just let me know if any of this is not clear or if you need me to elaborate. So every good boy deserves fruit from the bottom line up. It's really important that you get the directions right, otherwise the notes will be incorrect. That is for treble clef, and for bass clef, good boys deserve fruit always, and it goes in that line. And then all cows eat grass in that way. Cool. Any questions about that? No? Great. I see you shaking your head. You got vodka in that mark, Beg? Nothing. I was like, what are you drinking? Alcohol?
Coffee.
Yeah. Coffee. The next thing is le piano. As I said to you yesterday, there is two groups of black notes. There's the C and D sharp, and then F sharp, G sharp, A sharp. You see the first group of 2 black notes, and then the second group of 3 black notes. Pretty much, they're your anchor points. When you see the first group of 2 black notes, the note directly adjacent to that is a C. Everyone happy with that? Everyone know that they can find C on a piano? Good. From there, all you need to do goes C, D, E, F, G, etc., etc. And then you've got your basic C major scale, which is just from 1 C to an octave up, C above. The next thing I mentioned was that every note next to each other is a semitone. That is to say, a semitone is the distance between 2 notes. It's just a way of measuring distance, such as kilometers, centimeters, meters. We use that to measure actual distance. We measure in semitones distance between pitch. The notes directly adjacent on a keyboard are, well, they're neighbors. So this C to C sharp is a neighbor, the C sharp to D is a neighbor, D to D sharp, etc. Okay. Now E to F is a neighbor. So if I said E sharp, I would go to F. Yeah. And then if I said C flat, I'd go to B, because when I'm sharpening things, I'm going up a semitone, and when I'm flattening things, I'm going down a semitone. Is everyone happy with that concept? Yep. All right. So that was another recap. We sort of spoke about accidentals. Let's have any questions before I move on?
No, makes sense.
Thanks, guys. You rock. All right. I'm gonna have a quick chat. I eventually want to get to rhythm, but it's always a tricky one to broach. But let's just have a talk about the major scale. And this is going to take you back to many years of high school music. Oh no, sorry. I'll tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. Okay, so a tone is two semitones. So just as we move from C to C sharp, that's a semitone. We move from C to C sharp to D to be a tone. And note that because we're moving from one point to the next point, we don't count the first note because it's distance, just as if you're going from your house to the supermarkets and you're working out the kilometers. It's so topical right now, that analogy. You would not measure the point that you start. You have to actually move somewhere. Okay, a lot of people get themselves into trouble by going one and then two, but they have to go one, two. Okay. So the C sharp is one, D is second. All right, so that's a tone. Everyone clear with that? Tones and semitones? Happy chaps? All right. So the first thing we're going to do is just talk about the C major scale. Now, rule of thumb is when you're writing out a major scale, because I know you'll be doing this every day, is you just find your starting note and occupy every line and every space. That's going to be your first step. Cool? C to C. No qualms, no issues. All right. Now, it just so happens that is our C major scale. There's no accidentals, no accidentals. I could also do it here and encourage you to, oh gosh, encourage you to write in bass clef as much as possible because that's usually everyone hates bass clef. And as I said yesterday, that C, those two C's, where's that arrow pointing to? It's a little mutant arrow. There we go, perfection. Those two C's are the same, all right? That's C. All right, so if you see it on treble clef, you see it on a bass clef, same pitch. They create the same sound. That is the junction point between treble clef and bass clef. So here we have C major. Now, what I'd ask you to do is just check to see if the pattern works. So I'm moving from a C to a D. That's a tone. I'm moving from D to an E. That's a tone. E to F is a semitone. F to G is a tone. G to A is a tone. A to B is a tone. And B to C is a semitone. Everyone relatively clear with that? Yeah? Okay. Now, we also have what we call scale degrees. And that is just simply every note getting a number. Eight's always tricky. We kind of don't talk about 8 because it's technically 1. So they're scale degrees. Sometimes they have a little arrowhead, but most commonly not, because that's just only when we're talking about it in a theoretical sense. Generally, the relationship between the 1 and the 5 is very strong, as I'm sure you can note back to like high school music and stuff, tension and release. So when we hear this, we get our C major scale. So we got a 1, 5. So if I was to just chuck a few chords around, there's my 5 chord. And as we all know, we want to hear it resolve to the 1. All right, that's just super conventional Western music. What our ear is will navigate to naturally. Of course, many people will defy those rules and cheat them when they can. But this is just sort of speaking about it, obviously, in a theoretical concept. When we're building the major scales, we want to strengthen our understanding between the 1 and the 5. So the next major scale I'm going to create, those playing at home, what's the 5th note in the C major scale?
G.
G. Thanks, Rachel.
It's okay. Had to unmute myself.
Interactive. Oh yeah, sorry, you're muted, of course. Very polite of you. So the relationship between the C and the G, the way that I look at it is major scale is a set of building blocks. Any scale is a set of building blocks, okay? A scale is just a succession of notes. You can have major scales, minor scales, pentatonic scales, blues scales, chromatic scales, Phrygian scales, Egyptian scales, whatever. You name it, you got it. So we got our C major scale. It's just 7 notes that repeats indefinitely, okay? So you can go to a piano, practice your C major scale. Great, we're all happy. The relationship between the 1 and 5 is very strong, mainly due to physics, but we won't talk about that right now. We will not. But from a theoretical perspective, the major scale that we're going to create on the G is going to use the building blocks of the C major, but it's just going to alter by one note. Okay, so that's a very basic way of starting to work your way around what most of you are starting to ask about the circle of fifths. So circle of fifths is we'll start to talk about that in a moment, but it starts to build each key around the circle based on the fifth note preceding it. So I've started with C major, which has 0 sharps and 0 flats, and then we work around the clock, so to speak, because it will be 12, to G, and it's going to have 1 sharp, because when we move right, we're going to plus a sharp, and when we move to the left, we're going to subtract a flat. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is build a G major scale. Now, first rule, find your first G. Great. And occupy every line and every space. Okay. So as we've just discussed, things are not quite right yet because every other scale is going to have an accidental. So give me a thumbs up if you're on camera. G to A is a tone. That was like a question statement. A to B is a tone. I'll give the thumbs as well. Like, you were right, Daniele. B to C is a semitone. C to D is a tone. D to E is a tone. E to F is a semitone. So what do we need to do? Because in our pattern, we need to make it a tone, but right now it's a semitone.
Sharpen it?
Sharpen it. So you see the E on the screen. Right now it's E to F, it's just a semitone, and I actually need to make it a tone, so I'm going to... Hi, Marissa. Oh, Nabs is in. I'm going to go E, F, F sharp. Okay? So we're just looking at major scales for those that have just jumped in. The best part of music. All right. Is everyone happy with this? Any issues? Do we understand that E to F is now a tone and we've followed the major scale pattern? Any qualms, queries, objections? You can scream if you want. Vehemently and passionately, if you will. Okay, good. So now we have our G major scale. Traditionally, we would not just sharpen all the Fs. We would apply it to what we call the key signature. So all the key signature is doing is letting you know that every F that you see, any F on any line, any space, is going to be an F sharp. Okay, unless we spoke about yesterday, the F has a natural sign. That is the composer saying that you need to play just a plain as day, run-of-the-mill F. So one way of looking at it is a major scale is a succession of notes, building blocks, but the key is kind of like, I like to see it as kind of your neighborhood. Or a set of colors. There's many different analogies you can use, but all of these things work in tandem and they're very familiar. You know, you're used to seeing like Sally up the road and like Aunt Margaret up the street at the bakery. And this is just life as you know it. It's a really cool life. It's the life of the C major village. Okay. And then, you know, you might jump over to the next town. If those that play Pokemon, I'm truly channeling Pokemon vibes. You go to another village and then like Sally's there, but like it's John Smith at the bakery. And this is all a bit strange, but everything's a bit similar except for John Smith. So that's just my way of saying the building blocks are very similar, except one piece has been popped out and then another piece has popped in. Anyone, we're kind of on board with that very unusual analogy?
Yes.
So our ears are accustomed to all of these notes being together, and generally the home base is the root note, which is C, in this very general kind of theoretical way. And all we're doing is we're altering one note, and once we alter one note, we can actually trick the listener into thinking that we're actually moved into a different home base. And of course, there are let's say there are 12 villages because there are a total of 12 notes, each of them different than the next. So if I move from C to G, they're going to be quite similar. Now, the next thing I'll touch on is, so we're going to label these guys. What will be the next scale that I create?
D.
D. So I'm creating the scales. I can legitimately create a scale on any of these notes, but I want to understand the relationship between the 1 and the 5. So now I'm starting to get further and further away from C major. So if I play a tune, I'm in C major right now. I want to navigate to G major. And now I'm in G major. Okay, you don't need to understand that practically, but in a theoretical concept is fine too. I'm in G major. Now, if I was in C major, now I want to go to D major. Okay, for those playing at home, if you notice, it's a little bit more of a distinct movement than the first key. Okay, the transposition to G major is going to be much nicer for the listener, but to D major, it's just a little bit different. Most key changes, though, are just moving up a tone, so from C to D. So you get like your classic 80s pop tunes. They'll generally move up a tone, and the affectation there is to build momentum and enhance emotion and yada yada yada. Okay. All right. Any questions, guys? No. Great. I know you got your mics off. All right. So the next thing I'm going to do, D, E, F, G, A, and we'll stop at D. But what I'd encourage you to do in your own time would be to create as many scales as you can because it's fun. So now the information I already have is the F sharp. Okay, because we're already using the ingredients of the G major, so all the notes are going to be the same. It's just going to still have an alteration. Now, if you start to find that there's a little bit of a pattern here. So I got the D to the E is a tone, E to F sharp is a tone, F sharp to G is a semitone, G to A is a tone, A to B is a tone, B to C,
semitone.
Semitone. So I'm going to sharpen it, and it's going to become a C sharp. Okay. Bye, Michaela. Can you see when people leave?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Just wondering. It's not saying random sounds. Samantha? Frozen 2 reference. Cool. So the C sharp, it becomes a C sharp. All right. So, hi, Michaela. And as we can see, hopefully, is that we altered the F to become an F sharp, and then we altered the C to become a C sharp. Now, if I then quickly make the scale that's going to be a fifth, which is going to be an A now, I'm going to start it an octave lower. Sometimes my brain stops working. Okay. So this is an A major. I'm going to sharpen the C because it's related to D major. I'm going to sharpen the F, and then all you need to do is sharpen the 7th note, and then you've got your A major. Okay. Now, if you actually keep going through the 5 notes, the next one would be an E. All you need to do is take the sharps from the A major and then apply a sharp to the 7th note. Everyone kind of feeling cool about that?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Just little tricks and stuff. Okay, so just going back to my little Duvalaki here. Obviously, you need to plan the circle out, otherwise it turns into some very strange shape. Like A shouldn't be there at all. Anyway, that's okay. We move around the clock, and the sharps just increase. Okay, so it's very objective. You got 1 sharp, you're in G major. That's just it. Okay, maybe the tonality is a bit different for those with a bit more theory. Maybe we're in E minor, but we're still using the contents or the ingredients of a G major scale. When we have 2 sharps, we're in D major. It's not going to be a different key. It's just these are things that you just learn as rote. One little trick. I'll just chat about key signatures for a second. As I said to you, the key signature is just a quick way of saying that the notes will be sharpened. This is the key that we're in. So for G major, F sharp, every time you see a note on an F here, 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 if you want, it's going to be an F sharp, okay, unless specified otherwise by natural sign. Now, the trick to finding out the key signature, say, for example, you're just purchasing some music online and you really need to work it out, or I don't know, whatever the query comes, you take the sharp, the last remaining sharp in the key signature, and when I say last remaining, it's left to right as we read. The last remaining sharp, and you sharpen it by a semitone. So I've got this F sharp, and you visualize the piano, or you just visualize what is the next note. I sharpen it by a semitone, and I'm going to wind up at G. Okay? So when I see this signature with only one sharp, I know that I'm in G major. Okay? Yeah, everyone loves this trick.
Why didn't they teach me in VCE? This is awesome.
They don't like to teach you the tricks. If you know too much, then you'll run away.
This is great.
To another village where John Smith lives. Okay, making the bread. What did he do with Aunt Margaret? Why is she not? Who's she related to? Anyway, we'll never know. We'll do a different series about that. No, Daniela, don't. Stay focused. So, two sharps, F and C. Okay, I read it from left to right. I realize with the camera it's a bit difficult. What is? Well, I just answered for you. So, the sharp I'm going to sharpen is a C sharp. Okay. Because I'm reading from the first sharp to the next sharp. I read the last one in the list. It's a C sharp. Okay, cool. C sharp. I'm going to check C sharp, and I'm going to sharpen it to D. Any key, honestly. So I sound like an infomercial. It's just that simple.
But it is.
But it is. So what key are we in now?
E.
Firstly, E. Great. Did you use the method?
Yes.
Cool. So the last sharp in the list, which is reading from left to right, the last sharp in the list is a D, D sharp. Okay, it's not just a D. D sharp is a different note than D, although they use the same letters. All right. So I see D sharp. C D sharp. God, I gotta omit that word from my vocabulary. D sharp, and then I sharpen it. I'm in E major. Okay. Now let me tell you a little trick for flats, even though I haven't really talked about flat key signatures for a second. Now one flat is F major. There's kind of no trick for that. But it does get simpler, I promise. When you're reading flats, you look at the second last flat in the list, okay? Now, F major is a slight exception to the rule, whatever. Mm-hmm. When we're looking at two flats, the second last flat, there's only two flats. So that's the flat. Do we see that?
Yeah.
That we're in B flat major. That flat is on a B. It is the second last flat. It's in B flat major. Ooh. This guy, E flat major. So you're reading left to right. Second last flat, it's an E flat. We're in E flat major. Do you have any questions about that?
No, you just exploded my mind.
Good. That's what I look to do in these half-an-hour blocks. Your brain juice is flowing. Oh, Daniela, that's not appropriate. Okay. So there's just little tricks, all right? So it's nice to be able to go to a piece of music and confidently be able to know what key it's in without having to kind of go through your father Charles's Contra War and stuff like that. Just remembering that. I never learned that. I just can't be bothered. As a pianist, it's actually much easier for me to learn the keys practically rather than in this theoretical sense. So when I was learning it, I would just go through, start with C major, and then I'd be like, cool, that's C major. I'm going to learn the fifth up from that, G major. Okay. With piano, it's much easier rather than just writing it down because we're not always going to be writing it down. We're actually more likely going to be playing it. I'm like, cool, that's G major. And I just play the keys until I'm familiar with them. Then I'd go to D major, then A major, E major, B, F sharp. And I'd keep going until the C sharp is the little junction point. We won't get into this too much. C sharp can also be referred to as D flat. And in the circle of fifths, this is what I was referring to. C sharps and flats having different nicknames, nomenclature. They're just different ways of calling the note. Okay, so C sharp is also a D flat. When we move to, I'll move one step back to G flat. Generally, when we start seeing keys, we'll see it in either F sharp or G flat. When we start to move to C sharp, generally the key will be in D flat rather than C sharp. And then move to A flat, it's definitely going to be A flat, not G sharp, because we'll wind up with like 7 sharps. Whereas in A flat, we'll wind up with 4 flats. I realize I just sort of talked at you for the past 30 seconds. But what I'd encourage you to do is actually see if you can draw the circle of fifths at least like 3 to 4 keys in either direction. And you already have a set amount of information. You know that C has no accidentals. And when you move to the right, you're going to increase 1 sharp. And when you move to the left, you're going to increase 1 flat. I should have done a minus symbol. That doesn't really make sense. And the key, the next note you're going to create is going to be based on the 5th of the key that you've just created. So you're not just creating keys out of nowhere. You've already got information, okay? Is everyone happy with that? Any questions on that so far? So all we're doing when we're moving back into flats land, we're actually building the key off the 4th note in the scale. But of course, if you notice, you build F major, the 5th of F major is C. So whenever we're moving right around, as in the right direction around the circle of fifths, we're building it on the 5th. When we're moving to the left, we're building it on the 4th. And sometimes that will be referred to as circle of fourths. Most commonly, because I understand that most of you guys will want to apply this practically, and I like to combine piano and keyboard where I can. Sorry, theory and piano. Each of these fingers have numbers if you're learning piano. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When you're practicing your major scale, most of the fingering will be 1, 2, 3 on the right hand, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is just right hand. So it'd be 1, 2, 3. You tuck the thumb under. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then just back the other way. 4, 3, 2, 1. Third finger goes over. 3, 2, 1. All right. I know there's a bit of a theoretical teaching of piano, but if you can get to a piano and just sort of practice that, and it's important if you can just do that a few times, even just to build the dexterity and also build your familiarity with the piano. You don't need to do 2 octaves. You don't need to sort of jump into sort of difficulty, but maybe you can see how you can make it difficult by doing 2 hands or just 1 hand or whatever, increasing the octaves. When we're doing it with the left hand, I think my camera's flipped as well. Is it? Is this left? Wait, that's not a question. Don't worry. So when we're using the left hand, we're going to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1. So note 5 is the pinky. So left hand, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 3, loops over. 2, 1, 2, 3. Thumb goes under. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. We just have to have a play, to be honest. Cool. Does everyone feel mildly comfortable to go to a piano and practice some scales?
Yes.
No. No. Good. Cool. We're at time. Does anyone have any questions before we sign out? Do you feel like you learned something?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, good. All right. The more we move through this, I'll start to get a bit more philosophical. So those that when I start talking about quantum physics and life in general, come up to the right. It's always a good time. And I'm going to upload. Pleasure, Marissa. I'm going to upload this video, and I'll actually upload the PDFs if you guys think it'll be beneficial to you. To be honest, it looks like a bit of a mess, but maybe it'll do something for your brain. Please join me tomorrow. I'll start talking about rhythms and reading rhythms and pull up some new scores. And of course, if you have any questions, just chuck them in. Thanks, guys.
Cool. Amazing. Thank you.
All right. See you all another day. Play out music, don't I? All right, who's going to sign up first? You guys waiting for me? like awkward goodbyes. Hey, Michaela. How you doing? You're micless. Oh, cute. Sims, but for music. Yeah, right. What was that, right? Thanks for joining, Roxanne. Glad you can make it with the time difference. All right. See you later. No. Damn it. Yeah.